mental health in schools and its impact on students. Behind every classroom lesson, an unseen emotional battle is unfolding. In a typical school day, students move from class to class, absorbing knowledge, completing assignments, and interacting with peers. But beneath the surface, many are silently battling emotions they don't fully understand. Stress, anxiety, self-doubt, and the pressure to perform. A 12-year-old student sits in the back row, eyes darting between classmates, hesitant to speak up. They know the answer to the teacher's question, but feel a wave of uncertainty. What if I say something wrong? What if they laugh? The thoughts spiral and they decide to stay silent. This small hesitation repeats day after day until eventually they stop engaging altogether. A lack of emotional security gradually chips away at self-confidence. Now imagine another student, one who feels comfortable expressing emotions, asking for support, and navigating stress with tools they've learned. When they struggle, they don't hide it. They reach out, knowing their mental health matters just as much as their grades. The difference between these two students isn't intelligence, it's emotional safety. At Seeds of Tomorrow, we believe that education is more than just academics. It's about nurturing emotionally resilient, self-aware individuals who can navigate life's challenges with confidence. Our mission is to bridge the gap between mental health and learning, ensuring that schools become spaces where students feel safe, supported, and empowered. Through thoughtful discussions, practical strategies, and expert insights, we explore how emotional intelligence, resilience, and well-being can be woven into the fabric of education, not as an afterthought, but as a foundation for lifelong growth. Join us as we plant the seeds for a healthier, more emotionally aware future, one conversation at a time. Here's a step-by-step breakdown of how mental health in schools impacts students and what can be done to support them. Step 1. Understanding the emotional challenges students face. Why it matters. Mental health in schools isn't just about dealing with severe cases of anxiety or depression. It's about recognizing the silent struggles that impact every student, whether they show visible signs or not. Many children and teenagers battle emotional challenges daily, often without fully understanding what they're going through. Unlike adults, students may not have the vocabulary or emotional awareness to articulate how they feel, leading to frustration, disengagement, and inner stress that builds up over time. If left unsupported, these emotional burdens can affect academic performance, social confidence, and long-term resilience. The invisible emotional struggles students face. Many mental health challenges among students start subtly: a small hesitation, a withdrawn posture, or a quiet reluctance to participate. Over time, these signs grow into patterns that indicate deeper emotional distress. Some of the most common struggles include anxiety over academic performance. Fear of failure, pressure to excel, and perfectionism can lead to intense stress and burnout. Social anxiety and peer pressure. The fear of being judged, fitting in, or navigating friendships can create constant emotional tension. Emotional suppression. Students often hide their struggles because they fear being misunderstood or seen as weak. Overwhelming stress. Whether it's balancing school, personal life, or family challenges, students may feel mentally drained and exhausted. For example, a student repeatedly feels nervous before exams, but instead of reaching out for help, they keep their worries to themselves. Each test feels like a personal judgment on their worth, and over time, they begin avoiding challenges altogether. So, if students face so many hidden emotional struggles, why don't schools always recognize or address them? The emotional cost of ignoring mental health in schools. A child who doesn't feel safe expressing emotions will learn to suppress them. When mental health isn't actively addressed in schools, students struggle with self-doubt and fear of failure, develop anxiety around asking for help, believing it's a sign of weakness, feel emotionally isolated even when surrounded by classmates, carry unresolved stress into adulthood, affecting future relationships and decisions. For example, a student constantly hears phrases like, "just try harder," or "you have nothing to be stressed about." Instead of learning healthy coping mechanisms, they internalize the belief that struggling emotionally is unacceptable, making them less likely to seek support in the future. How can schools start addressing these challenges? Recognizing the signs. Schools must train teachers and staff to notice early symptoms of emotional distress instead of dismissing them as laziness or disinterest. Providing emotional education. Schools should incorporate lessons on self-awareness, emotional regulation, and stress management as part of daily learning. Encouraging safe emotional expression. Students should feel comfortable sharing their emotions without fear of judgment. Creating mental health support systems. Access to counselors, peer support groups, and structured well-being programs can make a huge difference in students' lives. For example, a school introduces a weekly check-in moment where students write down one thing they're struggling with and teachers guide discussions on managing emotions. Over time, students begin feeling more comfortable acknowledging and navigating their emotional challenges. Now that we understand why students struggle with hidden emotional burdens, let's explore how school environments can either support or worsen their mental health. Step 2. How school environments affect students' mental health. Schools should be spaces for intellectual and emotional growth. Yet when mental health is ignored, they can become sources of stress and insecurity. Many parents and educators see schools primarily as places of academic learning, but in reality, schools play a huge role in shaping students' emotional well-being. The atmosphere in a school, how teachers interact with students, the social dynamics between classmates, and the level of emotional support available directly impacts students' mental health, confidence, and overall development. When a school nurtures emotional safety, students feel valued and secure. But when the focus is only on performance without acknowledging emotional needs, students may experience chronic stress, self-doubt, and a deep fear of failure. How school environments can either support or harm mental health. Supportive, emotionally healthy schools. Teachers are trained to recognize and address students' emotional needs. The classroom feels encouraging and welcoming, allowing students to express their thoughts without fear. Strategies for stress management are actively taught and integrated into daily learning. Schools that neglect mental health. Teachers focus only on grades and performance, ignoring emotional struggles. Students who show signs of distress are labeled as unmotivated or weak rather than being supported. No resources or programs exist to help students manage their emotions and stress levels. Imagine this situation. In a supportive school, a student experiencing anxiety before a test is encouraged to talk about their stress. Teachers guide them through strategies to manage their emotions, improving both their mental well-being and performance. In a school that ignores mental health, the same student feels pressure to succeed, but has no emotional support. They silently struggle with stress, believing that anxiety equals weakness. Over time, they start avoiding challenges due to their fear of failure. Therefore, if schools play such an essential role in shaping students' mental health, why do so many still fail to address it? The challenges schools face in supporting mental health. Students should feel safe expressing their emotions, but many hesitate because they fear judgment. Why don't all schools focus on mental health? A culture of academic competition often puts grades above emotional well-being. Withdrawalists lack training in recognizing emotional distress in students. Schools may not have the resources, such as counselors or structured programs, to properly support mental health. For example, a student who struggles with low self-esteem constantly hears, "You need to try harder." Of receiving emotional guidance, they internalize the idea that struggling means failing. As a result, they push themselves harder while ignoring their emotional needs, leading to burnout. If schools want to improve mental health support, what strategies can they implement to make a real difference? If you're enjoying this, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps more people discover this valuable content. Step 3. Breaking the cycle. Creating a healthy emotional environment in schools. What if the key to improving students' mental health isn't just support, but prevention and emotional awareness? Understanding the emotional challenges students face is essential, but the real change happens when schools go beyond recognition and actively transform their environments. This means shifting the focus from academic pressure to holistic well-being, ensuring students don't just perform well, but also feel emotionally secure and confident. The traditional education system often conditions students to suppress emotions in favor of achievement. But schools that prioritize emotional well-being create confident learners who navigate stress in healthy ways, rather than internalizing fear and anxiety. Why emotional awareness is the key to mental health in schools. A school that values emotional intelligence helps students build resilience. It teaches them that emotions aren't weaknesses, but signals that guide decision-making. Preventative emotional education reduces mental health struggles. When students learn coping skills before encountering stress, they manage difficulties much better. A safe emotional environment allows students to focus on learning. When students don't have to fight through anxiety or emotional distress, their ability to concentrate and thrive improves. For example, a school implements weekly mental health discussions where students explore topics like stress, emotional regulation, and self-worth. Over time, they develop confidence in expressing their emotions and stop seeing mental health as something shameful or hidden. This raises the question, if emotional awareness is so powerful, how can schools make it a normal part of everyday learning? Practical steps schools can take to foster emotional safety. Teach emotional intelligence in the classroom. Schools should integrate mental health education alongside academics, teaching students how to process emotions, manage anxiety, and develop resilience. Empower teachers to recognize emotional struggles. Teachers need training in emotional awareness so they can identify signs of distress and respond with empathy rather than judgment. Encourage open conversations about mental health. Normalizing discussions about emotions reduces stigma and allows students to seek support without fear of being judged. For example, a teacher notices a student struggling with focus. Instead of immediately assuming they're lazy or uninterested, the teacher privately asks, "Is there something on your mind? Do you want to talk about it?" This small interaction reassures the student and builds trust, making it easier for them to seek help when needed. Creating support systems beyond the classroom, counseling and peer support programs. Schools should provide safe spaces where students can seek emotional guidance and support. Quiet zones and relaxation spaces. Creating dedicated spaces where students can take mental breaks can help manage stress. Parent-school collaboration for emotional growth. Parents should be involved in learning emotional coaching techniques to reinforce mental health strategies at home. For instance, schools introduce stress reduction corners, quiet spaces where overwhelmed students can take a break, practice breathing exercises, and recenter themselves before returning to class. Now that we've explored how schools can shift their environment, let's dive into what long-term emotional resilience looks like for students. Step 4. Building lasting emotional resilience in students. A child raised in emotional stability carries that strength into adulthood. When students experience consistent emotional grounding in school, they develop higher emotional intelligence. They learn to process emotions instead of suppressing them. Stronger resilience. Challenges become opportunities instead of threats. Healthier relationships. They communicate openly and confidently. For example, a school that integrates mental health education finds that students engage more in discussions, navigate stress with greater self-awareness, and build stronger peer connections because they understand emotional regulation. But emotional resilience doesn't magically happen. It must be cultivated intentionally through ongoing support, self-awareness, and a school culture that reinforces